Welcome to this week's card kit release for August 18th, 2020. This is Steph from Hofkist, and thanks for joining me. If you'd like to purchase your kit, visit hofkist.ca. To make the projects, you're going to need some basic adhesives such as these. Here is a look for the card kit contents for the first card. To get started here, I'm going to start with this white piece of die-cut cardstock and my animals, and I'm just going to lay them kind of in behind and on top of each square. I'm going to play around with it until I get the look that I want. Your animals might look slightly different by looking in a different direction or having a different color bird or something like that, but you'll have these basic animals. Just to get it to fit a bit better, I'm going to go ahead and snip a bit of this sloth off just to get it to fit in there properly. You're going to notice that my rhino here doesn't have a tail, but the one in your package certainly will. I just like using every little bit of paper. I actually cut these all from a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, so you're welcome. I did all the fussy cutting for you. To adhere the animals, once I have it in the way that I like, I'm just going to sneak a little glue dot in behind there, making sure that I don't glue my project down to my surface. So I'm just going to use this roll of glue dots, and I'm going to pick them up from the roll with my scissors, and I'm just going to sneak it in there. You don't have to really be sure to get them all adhered, but I don't want them to move. So I'm just going to put in a few where I think they're needed, and I just want to hold them down, because then we're going to flip over the project and I want to pop these pieces up. But before I do that, I'm just going to snip off a little bit of the overhang there, and I'm going to come in with some dimensionals. These ones are from Stampin' Up. I really like the way that they pop up your project, and you can also find these in my online shop at hofkist.ca. But moving on, I'm just going to pop them up all over my card. This is a preference as to how many or how little you want to use. I don't like saggy dimensional or saggy layers to my project, so I'm really gonna load it up here. I'm talking behind all the animals and all the way around the back of this layer. Now, if you had some of your animals sneaking in behind there, you saw that I used another glue dot and tucked it in. And if you need to fit in a tiny little piece, you can just take one of these dimensionals here and you can cut them in half. There are also mini dimensionals that I sell in my shop, and certainly use the border of your dimensionals because every single piece from that sheet will pop up your project. So once you have the right amount, you're just going to peel off the backings. Sometimes this could take a while, especially if you're like me and cut your nails the night before shooting this video. But anyway, here we go. We're gonna peel off all the backings, and so the dimensional here, it's a double-sided adhesive. So when you peel it off the sheet, it's already sticky, and then when you want to adhere it to your project, you have to peel off that extra little backing. So once all that is done, you're going to take the piece of patterned paper. This is a double-sided paper, but I like the orange side, so I'm going to put that on there. It's not so important to get the perfect fit because you can always take your scissors here and you can cut off what might be overhanging. You just want to make sure that the paper ends up in behind all of those windows there in the white sheet of paper. So go ahead and snip off anything that you might need, and then you're going to, before adhering this piece to your card base, you want to make sure that you wrap around the ribbon. So in your kit, you should have two pieces of like a coral thin ribbon and then that vine ribbon. So how I adhere it is I just take each strip of the coral ribbon and I put a glue dot on either end. Now instead of picking up the glue dot from the roll, I'm going to press the ribbon right into the glue dot. This is the easiest way to pick up that ribbon. So I'm going to add a glue dot to either end, and I'm going to wrap it around. I liked crisscrossing it, but certainly you can add the ribbon however you would like. The piece of vine here, it's also a piece of ribbon trim, and I'm just going to weave it kind of in and out, behind and on top of this coral ribbon. Now you can choose to omit this if you don't like the look. If you just want to lay it straight across, it's totally up to you. I just wanted to look like it was from a vine and weaving in around the ribbon to make this card look a little more wild to go along with those animals. So here I am just tucking it in and on top of the ribbon. And in a moment, once I get the look that I like, I'm going to again come in with some of those glue dots. It's probably pretty secure on there, but if you add some glue dots in behind each leaf, you can kind of manipulate them a little bit and move them in the direction that, or kind of to the area that you would like. And just make sure that everything stays nice and flat and it doesn't fall off your project. So here we go. I kind of forget how many glue dots I added. I think I went a little bit overboard maybe. You don't really need to add glue dots in behind each one, but like I said, you could manipulate the leaves a little bit if you want to slightly turn them in a different direction. And if you get a couple there that are popping up and might interfere with your card going in the envelope, you definitely want to make sure that those are laid down. So again, if you like this type of adhesive that I'm using or any of the adhesives, you can find them all in my shop at hofkist.ca. And I feel like humming right now because I don't really know how to fast forward this small little part of my video. But anyway, here we go. So you have this card base here. I've already folded mine in half. And here I'm going to come in with some liquid glue. There's that beautiful other side of the paper. It didn't quite work though to peek in behind those windows. So I'm going to use some liquid glue. This one in particular gives you a little bit of wiggle room so you can get it straight onto your project. And the front is done. Now if you wanted to add a sentiment or something, if you have stamps in your collection, you can go ahead and do that, or you can also find some free printables on my website, again, www.hofkist.ca. Now for the inside of the card, you have this coordinating strip. I always like to decorate the inside of the cards, so I'm going to glue that on first just in case it's not cut perfectly and you want to give that a trim if there's any overhang. So once you do all that, add some adhesive of your choice to the back of that and glue it to the inside of the card. And then you should be left with this tiny little cute kangaroo with a koala in the pocket, just so adorable. Also cut from the paper, and you can just go ahead and glue that where you want on the inside of your card. Certainly if you don't want to do a whole lot of writing, you can put it right smack in the middle. So here's a look at the finished project again, and we'll move on to card number 2. For the second card, you're going to need the same adhesives, and an optional would be a black marker that's quite juicy and a piece of scrap paper. Here's a look at the kit contents for card number 2. To get started, I just pulled out all of the little angled strips in my card kit and the adhesive backed piece of cardstock. You might have one that has this logo on it or the one that just has the white sticky. Either way, it's the exact same thing. So this is double-sided paper, so I just separated the piles from the 3 prints and flipped them over and made 6 little piles. You can certainly choose to use all like similar colors or mix and match them as I'm doing here. So you're going to go ahead and peel the sticky off of this piece of cardstock. You can throw that away. And then you're simply just going to start with your design of choice, and you're going to line it up here at the edge of the cardstock, and then you'll get this fun little angle. And from there, you're just going to keep matching the pieces, butt them up against each other, and keep going back and forth, changing the angle. You can choose to keep a thick end at the top and a thin end at the bottom, or you can really just have fun and really angle them. The piece of cardstock is about 2 inches in height, and the strips are about 3 inches, so you will have some overhang. So you can just play around with it a little bit and see how you want to keep, if you want to keep a little bit of the thinner part on the card or add a little bit of thicker part. Just be careful that once you place it down on your cardstock, the adhesive is quite sticky, so you won't be able to pick it up very easily. So you're just going to go along your piece of cardstock here and keep angling them and alternating the patterns. You can even decide to do all of one pattern first and then move on to the second one and that sort of thing. But you should have plenty of strips in your kit to get to the very end and choose the patterns that you like. I'm just going to finish up here, and once you get to the end, you might have just a little bit of a sliver, but this piece is also going to be quite long so that you'll be able to trim it off. But try to end it with enough of the pattern paper on your cardstock so it adheres quite well and you're not left with this tiny little piece. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So once you get your last strip on, you can just move your pieces off to the side and flip it over, and here you're just going to give your pieces a trim. I just like using a pair of scissors and using that cardstock as a guide, and I'm just going to take off all of these extra little bits and pieces. Make sure you get the sides and both ends if you have any overhang. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky, but you'll be fine as you're cutting it off. So here we go. Everything's cut off, and you're going to pull the rest of your kit together, and in that kit you'll have a piece of gray cardstock as well. It's about 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches thick, and I'm just going to tear it down about the middle. It doesn't have to be exact, and I'm going to tear it towards me. I like having that ripped edge, but you can take a look at either side of the cardstock and see which side you like better. This is a good paper saving technique. I'm going to take a tape runner now, and I'm just going to add a strip of adhesive there, and I'm going to sneak those ripped edges in behind. So when we go to place it on the card, it's going to look like we had a big piece of cardstock in behind this pattern strip, but in fact we just added 2 little bits. Great way to save paper. So then before you adhere it to your card, you want to make sure to add some more adhesive. And when we bring our card base over, you're going to see that I already notched out a couple pieces, and you want to keep those pieces to the front of you and on the left hand side. I'm going to angle my strip on my card, and you're going to have some overhang. Just make sure that the corners of that pattern piece that we just put together fit over the front of your card. So just like we did with that paper strip, we're going to go ahead and trim off our sides. Now, your scissors might be a little sticky after this because you do have the adhesive hanging over, and just use your card base to get the cut just right. So once that's done, this is the optional bit here with the marker if you want to do a little bit of spritzing. I like using these Stampin' Right markers from Stampin' Up. They have both a brush end and a writing tip end. I'm going to use the brush end here, and I'm just going to use the lid, and I'm going to flick the ink out of the marker using the cap as a bit of a resistance there. You can also try tapping your marker to the cap or block or plate or your hand or something like that, and you just want to make sure whatever marker you're using is pretty juicy. Now you can flick as much or as little as you want, or you can skip this step altogether because you will get kind of inky. Once that step is complete, you can go ahead and thread your twine. You should have 2 different pieces of twine in your kit. And the notches that I put in the card will just help to hold the twine in place and not make your card super bulky. I gave you quite a bit of length here, so it should be relatively easy to tie a bow. But should you not be able to tie a bow, you can simply just tie a knot and be done with the card. Either way, you're going to be left with some overhang here, so you just want to take your scissors and trim those up. To finish things off here, we're going to add a few more pieces to the front of your card. You'll have half of a dinosaur egg and this orangey strip of paper and a white dinosaur. We're going to start by adding that piece of color in behind those holes. So just add a little bit of glue just to hold that down in place, and then trim around your dinosaur here. No, sorry, not your dinosaur egg. So you want to get rid of that extra overhang of paper. I added a little bit of stitching detail just to give it some more interest to the card. You can choose to do a different design or omit this step altogether. But if you wanted to do this, I just used a writing tip. You can use a black marker, or if you had like a gel pen or something like that, just to add this bit of detail. I went around the entire dinosaur egg, and then I only did about half of the dinosaur because I knew that my dinosaur was going to tuck in behind this egg. But if you wanted to play it safe, you can do the stitching or the design or whatever you decide to do around the entire dinosaur, just to make sure that everything gets hidden when you go to place your card together. Here we're just going to continue with the stitching. Again, I wish I could figure out how to fast forward the certain part of my video, so I apologize for that. Now I wanted to add that splattering technique again, so I'm going to take this white piece for the inside of the card, and I'm just going to add a little bit of splatter off to the side, and I'm going to bring my egg and my dinosaur again, and I'm going to add that splatter detail to both pieces. I just thought it gave a fun look to the card and the elements on it, and kind of gave that egg a speckled look. So we're almost done now. We're going to bring all our card pieces back together, and in your kit you're going to have a this white piece that we just spritzed, and we're going to glue that to the inside of the card. You're also going to have a printed dinosaur that was cut from the paper. Now every kit had a different dinosaur, different color, or a different type of dinosaur, so your dinosaur is likely going to vary from the one that I'm going to glue to the inside of my card. But if you choose to glue one, you're only going to have one. I was just showing two to show that they're all different, and you can go and glue that to the bottom right hand side over the part that we spritzed. Again, you can choose to omit this one, or you can glue it somewhere else in your card. It's totally up to you. To finish the front of the card, we're going to bring back our egg and our stitched dinosaur. I'm going to add a couple of dimensionals here just at the bottom of the egg so that I can get that adhered to the front of my card. And the reason I just put it at the bottom is because I want to sneak this dinosaur in behind as if it was just hatching out of that egg. So this one I'm going to glue down flat, and I'm going to sneak it in behind my popped up egg here and glue it down to the front of my card, and this card is all done. What do you think of this one? Pretty cool, eh? For the last card, you're going to need those adhesives again. An optional would be a black marker and a scrap piece of paper, and very optional would be an emery board or a piece of sandpaper. Stay tuned to see how to use that. Here's a look at the contents in card kit number 3. For this last card, it is a fun fold card. So it's kind of a paper saving fun fold and just opens up a bit differently, so it gives it some interest. So I just pulled out my card base and these 2 layers here. The blue one I embossed for you, so it gives it a raised texture, and you just want to play around with it to fit it on top of the green piece with a slight overhang on either side. So it's going to butt up at the top and the bottom, and you'll have a tiny 1/8 of an inch or so piece of the green sticking over each side. So go ahead and glue those 2 together. Then your card base I've pre-scored here at the top, and you're going to just fold that little flap over. This is a 1-inch flap, and you just want to give that a good crease down there. And we're going to pull out these 1-inch strips of patterned paper. These are double-sided, so you can choose to do either side, I think would work. And you also have a white piece of paper that's going to go in the middle. But to get started, you're going to add adhesive to each of these strips here, and you're going to glue them right on your card base on the left and the right side, butting it up against the edge. Now you don't want to go right up to the crease because you want your card to still fold over nicely, so just pay attention to that. Go ahead and glue the other piece down to your card, again lining it up along the edge and making sure that you leave a little bit of room there at the fold. Once that is all glued down, you might have a little bit of overhang here, so you can go ahead and trim off those pieces. Next, we're just going to take that green and blue piece that we glued together and place it in between those 2 strips there and along the bottom of your card. We're not going to move it up to the top because this is a thicker piece. You want to make sure that your card does not, or that it folds properly and doesn't really pop open or anything like that. So you're just going to keep it level at the bottom, add some adhesive to that piece of cardstock instead of your card base because you don't want any glue to end up where it doesn't belong. But if it does, you can just go ahead and take it off so that your card doesn't get all sticky. Next, you're just going to take your blue ribbon that's in your pack of materials, and this one we're going to tie into a bow. So I brought my ribbon over to the left-hand side, and not a bow, you're going to tie it into a knot, a double knot. So I'm just taking it and moving it to the left-hand side of the card and tying it in a knot. You won't have enough to do a bow on this one. So get it lined up. You might want to sneak a glue dot or 2 in there if it's moving around or you didn't get it tight enough. And then you just want to trim the ends. I angled them to give it a nice little look here. So once that's all done, we're going to move on to the other pieces in the kit. You have this white piece of paper. Nope, we're not going to glue that down first. You're going to find your printed whale from the paper that I cut out for you already, and you're going to glue that to the white paper. The reason I did this is because I wanted it to overhang a little bit, and before I glued the white piece into the card, I wanted to trim off that tail again. Of course, you can have it hanging over if you wanted to, but just be careful because those two panels that we glued on the inside of the card do show on the outside, so you don't really want to have a piece of the whale hanging over there necessarily, but you can choose to do what you want. It is your card. So once you do that, you're just going to glue that to the inside, again paying attention that it's not too high up on the card, and you want to trim over or trim the back if there's any overhang before moving on to the next steps. Now we can finish off the front of the card. There's just a couple pieces left here. So now we're going to grab all these little bits and pieces here. You should have pieces for a whale, you should have a little green piece of paper, and you should have a piece of scrap wood. So we're going to start first by assembling our whale. So you'll take this kind of belly piece of the whale, add a little bit of adhesive, and glue that one on. Then we can come in with some of our glue dots, and we can add the I was going to say sprouts of water, but I don't think that's correct. The little pieces of what? Of water. You should have two of those, a light blue and a dark blue, and I'm just going to layer them over top of each other. And then using another glue dot, I just find glue dots to be the easiest for small pieces like this and mess free. So you're just going to add that to the top of the whale. And then you should have a little fin, so you have the fin that's attached to the whale in the dark blue and a fin here in the light blue, and you can just layer that on top to give the whale his two fins, or her two fins. I don't know if it's a boy or a girl. From there, I just used my black marker again. I'm going to use the writing tip first, and I'm just going to add some detail. This is totally optional. I used that printed whale that we glued on the inside as a guide as to where to add the eye and a little bit of the mouth and the top there for the spout of the whale. And again, I'm going to use the other end here to add some splatter. The printed whale did have some splatter on it, and that's where I got this idea from, to just give it some more texture, but I just think it's fun to play with as well. We can move him off to the side and work on our next piece. So this piece of wood here was supposed to be like your garbage piece of wood, but I thought that from another project, but I thought that it would add some good dimension here to the whale instead of using dimensionals. So we're going to cover that with a piece of paper, and you can go ahead and trim off around your piece there and get as close to the edge as possible. Now, optional is an emery board or a piece of sandpaper, and this actually gets the edges to be quite smooth and come off crisply. The trick is to move it away from you and along the edge, because you're using that hard edge of the wood to kind of bend and tear off the paper. And you'll just go around the entire piece, and it's just so easy and mess free. You really won't get a great perfect cut using just scissors, so this is my trick and I use it a lot in my DIYing. So just go around the whole piece here, and then you can like play around with it. You can angle your emery board if you want to distress the paper a little bit. Start off lightly if you wanted to add some of this distressing. You can see that the white core of the paper is coming through here. And I just went around the whole thing after I got rid of the edge and just gave it a little bit of a distressed look. This is totally optional and depends on the look that you're going for. Get your mess out of the way and we can bring in these last few pieces here and put them on the front of the card. So I started by gluing this piece of wood down. Again, it just gives it a nice little background for a whale to get onto and adds a little bit more color to the front of the card. So go ahead and glue that down, and then we'll come in with our whale that we put together, and we can add some adhesive to that. You don't need to add adhesive to the whole thing because, as you're going to see here in a minute, I have some overhang. Depending how much overhang you have, you might need to sneak a dimensional or something in behind there. This pretty much finishes up the card, but at this point I realized that I did not give myself all the pieces. So here we go. You're going to add these little enamel dots to the front of your card. Optional, I included this white piece of paper if you wanted to stamp a sentiment, but you can also find free printables on my shop. Here's another peek at the 3 projects that we created. I hope you enjoyed this week's release. Thanks for watching and crafting with me, and until next Tuesday, stay crafty, my friends.